How you doing out there in the virtual world? Here we are at the Atizfacts Studio Gallery. I'm your artist, Kevin McDowell, otherwise known as Kim, but not Kim as a musical artist. Today I'm going to be working on the second phase of the piece of artwork which I titled Uptown Sister. It's originally a rendition, or I should say second rendition, of a collage painting I did, but I decided in this style to go back to my classic style as an illustrator. When I was in college, I would paint work and create work that was more of a illustrative style / humorous cartoon style. But what I've decided to do is to go back and reinvent the wheel, so to speak, in terms of my style of work. So after about 20-something years of pretty much painting more of a cubist abstract style, I decided to go back to basically grassroots. I mean, one of my ambitions was to become an animator, a humorous illustrator. So I decided really to go back to that, or my earlier style, in terms of capturing, the essence of urban life in this new series of work that I'm going to be working on in the next few months. So you're about to see a preview of that earlier style of work that I used to create in this new series, and this first painting called Uptown Sister. Later on I'll explain the whole meaning and symbolism behind the Uptown Sister piece as I continue to work in this new series and I document the series. So stay tuned and see the video clips at the Atizfacts Studio Gallery online at facebook.com. So the piece called Uptown Sister is going to be a mixed media piece. I think most of the medium I'm going to work with in this piece is pencil. And I haven't done a lot of pencil renditions of work in a while. So it's always good for me to always go back to just play with different mediums. Primarily I use acrylic paint, oil, collage, watercolor, usually a variety of different mediums, but color pencil is something I haven't used in a while, so I'm going to start this rendition in the second phase of the Uptown Sister in pencil.
First order of business, get your tools, get the color pencils. With this, of course, is the professional grade Prismacolor. I only use professional grade material for the work, of course, because for the art connoisseur, the collector, it's all about giving them quality. You don't want to do a nice piece of work with hokey material. So it's always worth the time to make the investment and a nice tool set of material and tools that's going to pay for itself in the long run. And these are a set of colors I've gotten actually about maybe a year ago as a gift from my wife, because she knew I was itching to get some color pencils, and she said, hey, let me get these. And so we're about to get ready. So get the tool sets ready, and these need to be sharpened. I'm sticking with the flesh tones, neutral flesh tones. Got a little bit of gold. I'll explain where the gold is going to work in there later. Some beige, tan, some peachy rose, brown. Just to start with the basics of the composition, and we're gonna get started. Gotta load them up. Gotta get the tools ready. What kind of point I got? Oh, not too sharp. Since it's been a while since I've used these, sharpen up a little bit. I'm not gonna bore you though with the clip sharpening pencils. I'm also gonna start with these colors. One is called Sand, and the other one is called Jasmine in the Prismacolor set. Just to get started, I'm going to use the light colors first as the base tone, just to get a feel of how this is going to work. And I always start off with the light colors because you don't want to start off too dark in your color scheme, because if you make mistakes, then it's like, oops, how do you change that? So I'm going to put a little bit of light tone in here. And what I'm doing is going over the original pencil rendition. And this is just to bring color tone into the composition, and very evenly, maybe a little back and forth, small areas at a time. And then I'll do is I'll start over shadow areas and work towards the middle. Sometimes, we're using this kind of medium as a pencil on top of pencil. It mixes, it pulls the graphite or the lead into the composition. So that's why you have to be very mindful of the very light rendition. I find that sometimes color pencil is sometimes also very difficult to erase, and you don't want to do too much erasing. So just very light, again, very, very light tones. You may be able to see the color streak because the Prismacolor is actually pulling, again, the color pencil, and I'm just doing this a very light. And then in certain areas I'll go over a different medium. Maybe if I need to highlight some of the white areas to bring highlights into the face. So very, very subtle, very subtle. Yeah, guy, remember, folks out there remember that painter, Bob Ross, the late Bob Ross. The guy with the afro. He's come on TV and he would say, "Well, how you do it? And this is how you do it." Well, I'm only bringing that up because he's had some of an influence on some of the work I do, only in terms of education, because I teach students artwork, fundamental arts, and one of the things I teach them is landscape painting. But I use his technique because I think it was pretty cool for a guy who can paint a realistic painting in 20 minutes. So that's why I bring reference to that. So the guy had a pretty cool style of working fast, and I have to give people props. Whoever they are, if you could knock it out and you can do it, it's all good. Now you may see some color, very subtle color in the subject, and then what I would do is where the shadow areas are with the same color, and this is again color sand. What I'll do is I'll go over the shadow areas the same color, but then add a little bit more intensity. This is also for visual reference, so I know where my shadow is going to be after the first original sketch, and also help bring out the color tonation of the shadows. And then later on I'll change some of the color variations. I may use beige, saddle brown, in different layers, repeating the same process. And then I'll pull away and add to certain areas which I want to dominate with tone. I make it dark over here. It's a little bit more also in here. Just bringing out, parts of the structure of the body. And again, very, very subtle. Go back and forth. Just layering with the pencil, layering, layering, bringing out the color. And again, it's very, very, very subtle. Subtlety is, I find in this technique for me works because if you put in too much color, then again, it might be hard to take away. A little here in the face, working on the shadow areas, more pressure to shadow areas, on the nose, under the nose, a little bit more pressure. Subtle, subtle, bringing out the color in the face, around the eyes. Also, I find the subtleties are better because it allows you to blend your color schemes. Of course, Uptown Sister, she's, the sister, she's sassy, she's sexy, she's powerful, she's like confident. And the funny thing about this is that folks will sometimes say, well, who is that supposed to be? It could be any sister. And folks will say, well, no, who's that supposed to be? Well, it's not anyone in particular. I mean, sometimes when I'm doing a piece of work, and like years ago when I would use illustrative style, and I would just draw people, men, women, sometimes it's kind of funny. I would have to give a disclaimer. They're doing Hollywood movies. The person depicted in this or characters are completely coincidental. You have to do that because sometimes, a piece of work could look like actually someone. I think that maybe you haven't intentionally thought about the person, but I guess subconsciously you may have like some reference to the person, maybe something they wore, something they did, something they said, and it could be a culmination of different people. It could not necessarily be one person, but it could be 3 or 4 people combined based on certain personal attributes, and then that was what you're trying to capture, and it comes out subconsciously. I found that I've done work and then later on look at it and go, oh, I never thought about that. Now what I'm doing is changing the direction of the stroke. If you've been noticing from the earlier part of the clip, I've been working pretty much in one direction, and now I'm changing the direction of the stroke. This is because it creates a crosshatch effect and it creates layers of shadowing. And again, I'm still using the same color. I haven't even changed the color yet because I want to work subtle. I don't want to work too harsh because again, sometimes working harsh it could be disastrous in terms of if something comes out the way you don't like it, then it's like, oh, how do you change this? And then it takes, it's a bigger process, a deeper process, more intense in terms of trying to change what you have. But that's okay too, because change is part of the growth of the artwork. The same way you start off with a blank canvas, and then when you're done, you have this masterpiece. Again, changing the direction of the strokes. And now you start to see some subtle tone, mixing with the gray and neutral. And it's going to take a lot more work to work in. And I'm bringing out the shadow areas to bring out the detail and the depth. So there's more work to do with this. Now with this part in phase one, I've switched to my deeper color tone, goldenrod. I've already completed, my first layer of color, just getting the tone in. And now I want to continue to bring out and accentuate shadow lines. This is going to help guide me also in terms of bringing in the additional shadows in the image, and therefore bringing out depth. So very subtle, what I'll do is I'll just highlight, certain peak areas in the work. See over here, I did where the hair is, the shoulder, the arm, just bringing it out, just giving it a little more depth in the composition. So now I'm going to work up where the face is and just take my time and accentuate the lip area, especially under the lip, because the under the lip has the shadow tone, and within the lip, the bottom portion of the top lip, because for those who don't know, this area is usually in shadow and there's not much natural sunlight that hits the bottom lip, because the bottom lip goes inward to the face. So I'll just add in some of this shadow tone, and again, this is just the flesh tone. Later on, I'll give Uptown Sister maybe like a lip gloss or glossy lip, nothing too bright, maybe in the mahogany color tones, something that I have to ask myself the question, what would this sister wear in terms of makeup? What color tones? Will she wear this bright pink? Nah, I don't think so. Something I think that would complement her skin. I have to think of it realistically. What would she wear? So just putting in some of that shadow tone in there, and then the outline around the nose, bringing that out a little bit, staying on the line, just subtle. I wouldn't re-outline the whole nose, just certain peaks to accentuate where the shadow tones would be, the bridge.